Hi, how you doing? I'm going to cut some garlic scapes today, and then I'm going to go in the kitchen and make some garlic scape relish. I thought maybe you'd like to join me. My name is Sharon. I garden on a large yard in a small town in east central Saskatchewan, Zone 3. Welcome to my Sask Garden. So this is what we're basically looking for when you want to cut a garlic scape, is you want that one circle to have formed. And when they first start out, they kind of come out looking like this, and they're a little bit shorter, and then eventually they will make that curl, and this part still grows a little bit more. So that's what you want to look for. This part of the garlic scape right here, that's the flower. That if you let it go, that will form a flower, and that flower will open, and then it'll form seeds, and then those seeds could be planted to make more garlic. Now, it will take probably 3 years, maybe more, for it to form a decent clove from seed, but you certainly can do it. I have done it. You can just put them off to the side somewhere, your seedlings, and they will eventually make garlic cloves. Anyways, this is hardneck garlic, and it is the music variety. It is scaping a little bit earlier, maybe a week earlier for me this year. Usually I'm cutting them sometime around the long weekend in July. So today is the 25th of June, and I'm going to cut a few. Not all of them are ready, but a number of them are, and enough to make a small batch of garlic scape relish. And so that's one. A couple methods that you can use for getting the garlic scapes. And some people say to pull. Now, I'm not fond of that, but when you pull, it snaps off. This one is not yet ready. I'm not going to take that one. I think I'll leave this one as well. This one is a great big one. It's actually working on its second curl. So that's a nice one. Now, if I were to pull, I just feel like I'm exerting too much pressure, but it does just snap off at the end of it. And so what I generally do is I go in with some clippers and I just cut it off right there. I get down as low as I can. Sometimes that stem will still grow a little bit more. And anyways, I've always had good luck with just cutting it off. I don't damage the plant. I'm always a little bit worried about pulling something out or yanking too hard or something like that. So I always cut them. So I'm just going to cut off the ones that I know are ready with the curl. And the other ones I'll leave for another week or so. So there's a few that I've cut. All right, I have about 20 scapes. The original recipe that I've found calls for 10 cups of garlic scapes. And I measured this. I think it's probably, before they're chopped up, I think it's probably 3 to 4 cups. But as I did last year, I made this recipe last year. And as I did last year, I actually cut the recipe into 1/3. I didn't want to make, I don't think I had 10 cups of scapes last year. And also I didn't want that much garlic relish. It was also the first time me trying it. And so, I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out. As it was, it turned out very good, with a couple little tweaks. And so I'm going to make just a small batch, which I think probably will make maybe 3 or 4 of these little jars is what I'm thinking, which is plenty for what I want. Now, I think that this part of the flower is certainly edible. And just underneath, that's kind of a little bit tough. You can actually feel going down the stem, You know, this part lower is softer. You don't have to cut it off, but I'm going to cut off the flour bits. And then this part up here I'm also not going to use. I don't know, you probably could. It's quite tough though, it might be chewy. And I think that I won't. What I will do is I'm going to save these for another recipe that I'll tell you about a little later, how I like to use the extras. I've already rinsed these. That's really all that was required. I do have some hail. You can see a little bit of the hail damage that did occur on these stems. I can see that actually throughout my garden now, the little bits of hail damage here and there on leaves and stems and such, but I think everything will be fine overall. So we'll just trim them off. And again, I'm making just a small batch, about 1/3 of the recipe that I initially followed. Ten cups of garlic scapes seemed like a lot to me, but I don't think that's 10 cups of chopped up scapes. Also, I sort of think that if this were to turn out a little bit too garlicky for you, you could use less garlic scapes and increase the amount of onion and red pepper. Those are the only two other main ingredients in the recipe aside from the seasoning is peppers. It calls for red peppers. I don't know that it would make a difference if you used green or yellow or orange. Red perhaps for the sweetness, I'm not sure. And then it says to chop in pieces before you put it in the food processor, and that's just to mulch it up pretty good before you get going on the, oh, I think I missed one there. Before you get going on the relish, you need it to be chopped up and minced up. And the food processor seems to work quite well for that. And I don't do everything all at once. I'm going to do the garlic separately and the pepper separately and the onion separately. There's a 1 cup measure. So chopped up. By the time I'm done with it in the food processor, it's probably going to be 1 cup of minced up garlic scapes. So I'm just going to pulse that. Maybe a little bit more. Nope, still a bit more. That's pretty good. As I said, these just under the flower stem, those pieces are tougher, and that appears to be what is taking the time to chop up more fine is those little tough pieces, because they have sort of a small diameter to them. Like that right there. See, that's still a little bit too big. I think I'll do it just a little bit more now that I've taken my blade out. I think that's better. I mean, it's a relish, so you do kind of want it to be not mushy, but small pieces, definitely. Small like what's on the side of the bowl, kind of small. So I still do have some large pieces in there, but they're going to be fine now. So I'll just get that out. And we'll do up, the recipe calls for 4 peppers. I'm doing 2. Truly, I think it's, a total amount of vegetable at the end of it. So if you wanted to use more peppers, less garlic, more onion, maybe add in some other vegetable that you quite like. I would go with a non-watery type of vegetable, but maybe, celery, if you wanted to put in some celery, I suspect that would be okay. It really does taste like a sweet garlicky relish at the end of it. And I can't say that you really taste, maybe you can taste the onion a bit, but I'm not going to say you can really taste the peppers. I think it's probably for color and maybe for a little bit of sweetness. Of course, it's a relish, so you're going to add sugar anyway. But like any relish, you can sort of take away and add, by small amounts, of course, not completely, but you can make amendments in pretty much any relish. Let's chop them up roughly because they are going to go in the food processor. So that's 2 red bell peppers. They don't take much time at all. And then we'll do 2 onion. The original recipe with the 10 cups of garlic scapes originally calls for 3 cups of onion. So I suspect this will equal a third, about a cup of onion, I would think, maybe a little bit more. All right, and that's it for the vegetables. I mean, it's a very simple, easy recipe to get done. And I'm going to mention now how long garlic scapes last in the fridge. I think I've had them last easily 8 weeks before I went ahead and used them. So, just because you're either picking them this weekend or you're getting some this weekend, the onion is making my eyes water. Just because you're getting, some, or you don't have enough, you only have maybe a half a cup of garlic scapes or something, or you only have a few and you want to get more. You certainly could leave them in the fridge for a long time until you get more, or you have a whole bunch, you think you have to use them up right quick, but you don't. They last for a long time. They don't lose any flavor. These pieces that I cut off, I'm going to put them in a baggie in the fridge. They're going to last a long time as well. And one of my favorite ways to use these is to make a bed of them just underneath a pork roast and put a seasoned pork roast on top and then roast it in the oven, and the juice that comes off it is amazing. The broth that comes off it, which could then be spooned over top of the pork or made into, oh, my eyes are still watering, or made into a gravy if that's what you chose to do. But that's what I'm going to do with these, and I'm not going to worry about using them up really quickly. Same thing with the ones in the garden. I can pick them as they're ready. If there's a few that aren't ready, I could leave them, and I'll just keep putting them in a baggie in the fridge and just leave them in the fridge, and they're going to be fine. So that's what we lined up with. And I have a 4-cup measure here beside me, and I'm going to say that is probably about 4 maybe 5 cups of chopped up vegetables. So now this is a recipe that requires the relish. The vegetables require sitting in with salt over top of them for the night. And it calls for if you were doing a full recipe, it calls for 5 tablespoons of salt. And so to cut that into a third, 5 tablespoons is 15 teaspoons, and a third of that is 5 teaspoons of salt. So that's what I'm going to sprinkle over here, and then mix it up. And that was a good amount of salt last year. I don't recall it being too salty or not salty enough. So that's a good amount of salt. So, and then you just mix it up, and you can leave it either on the counter or in the fridge overnight. And then step 2 tomorrow. So I'll see you tomorrow for the rest. Okay, here we are for part 2. So the first step for the second day is you take that mixture that has sat overnight with the salt and you rinse it well in a colander in cold water. The notes of the recipe indicate to do that with a non-reactive colander. I just use my regular sieve. I guess it's looking for plastic. My plastic colander, the holes are a little bit too big, and so some of my vegetables probably would have fallen through the holes. So I just used my sieve. It was just a constant rinse with cold water for maybe about 5 minutes. And then you put it in a pot, and we're going to cook it for a little while. Again, I'm breaking this recipe down to 1/3 of the recipe is basically what I'm doing. And so I'm adding a cup of sugar and a cup of apple cider vinegar. You can also use regular white vinegar, the recipe states. And the other ingredients it calls for is equal amounts of turmeric, ground mustard, and celery seed. I used 1/3 of a teaspoon, a little better than 1/4 of a teaspoon and a little less than 1/2 teaspoon of each ingredient. The recipe also calls for black pepper, and I added black pepper last year, and as soon as I tasted it, I was actually immediately sorry that I did add black pepper. I don't know that black pepper is an ingredient that is good in a relish, so I left it out. I think there's enough heat with the garlic scapes. I don't think that the pepper is necessary, so I did leave it out. But then that's me, and I'm not a big fan of black peppers at the best of times. So anyways, I did leave that out. And now we're going to cook this, bring it to a boil, and then keep it on a low boil for about 30 minutes. Okay, so that's been about a half an hour, and the instructions say about 30 minutes or until it's relish consistency. Really, it's a matter of cooking the vegetables to get them softened, and I think, the liquid needs to boil down just a little bit and get a little bit of thickness to it. Then it says to pack that hot finished relish into hot jars, and then just ladle it into the jars. And one of these is very helpful. It's one of you can pick those up at Dollar Tree or something like that. They are super helpful. Now, I'm not going to process these to make them shelf stable. These are going to be just kept in the fridge So they're like a fridge pickle. Oh, looks like I'm gonna get 3 of these little, I think they're half pints. Yeah, that's about what I'll get. Three and a bit. So these will stay in the fridge just like that without any further processing for a good 6 months. They're going to be fine. The lids are also hot, fingertip tight. Let them cool just like that for several hours before you go ahead and put them in the fridge. They're also, it's also going to be tastier if you let that whole thing kind of cure and all the flavors blend for a couple days before you go ahead and eat. So I should have mentioned that if you do want to process to make it shelf stable, it's 15 minutes in a hot water bath, and adjusting for altitude if you normally have to do that. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope that you get a chance to try this garlic scape relish. It is very good. It's really good on hamburgers and hot dogs, particularly good. It makes a nice gift as well if you are heading to a barbecue and taking along something a little bit different as a gift. Anyways, I hope you found the video informative. I hope you give it a try. If you did give it a try, or if you do plan to give it a try, leave me a comment down below. Down below also in the comments, in the description of the video, is where you're going to find a link to the recipe that I originally started with. So if you did like the video, give me a thumbs up, tell your friends, and if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. Thanks again. See you.